Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'll be taking you through how to perform the best you can in your A-level maths tests in year 12 and 13 to get the best results possible. For any prospective further maths students or anyone who's just interested, I will link a video somewhere here which will take you through my preparation for a further maths test. Also, anyone in year 10 or 11 who is taking their GCSEs, I'll also link a video somewhere here again, which shows you how I managed to achieve 12 grade 9s in my GCSEs with 3 simple steps, so be sure to check that out if you would like to. So, without much further ado, let's get into the video. Because of my very helpful year 12 teacher, he actually had a spreadsheet of all the tests I did in year 12 and the marks I got, so I could actually give you that information. So in year 12, I did 6 tests, all were 70 marks, and I averaged 67 out of 70 marks, which I was pretty happy with. And they got better progressively during the year, so I think I kind of figured out how to revise for these tests as the year went on. And then this year I've had 2 tests, both out of 75, and I managed to get 75 and 74 out of 75. So yeah, I think I've basically got it down to a T now of how to revise for these A-level maths tests that I get. Alright, so this video can be split into 4 main sections. I'll timestamp them down below so you can skip to the section that applies most to you or you want to watch the most if you don't have time to watch the whole video. These 4 sections are attack your weaknesses, exam practice, make sure you understand topics, and utilising online resources. Let's get straight into it with attacking your weaknesses. So in maths specifically, and I'm definitely subject to this, way too many people just do the topics that they're confident and really good at without focusing on the topics that they're really not that good at. And it makes sense, you get satisfaction when you solve a maths problem. So really, if you want to, feel good about doing maths, you're going to do the questions that you're good at. However, within your exams, you can't really just do the questions you're good at if you want to achieve that top grade. But how do you attack your weaknesses? Well, there's kind of 2 sections to this. The first section is knowing what your weaknesses are, and the second section is having the resources available to you to attack those weaknesses. So, let's talk about section 1, how to find out what your weaknesses are. The way you do this is through textbook questions and exam practice. So, by doing textbook questions, past papers, and maybe just your homework, you really should be seeing where your weaknesses are. When you look at a problem and you don't really understand it, that is generally going to be a weakness. So that's the first step of how to see what your weaknesses are. The second step to attack them is just utilising your textbooks. Whether that be online or physical, by utilising your textbook, they'll have a specific section just for that topic. There'll be quite a lot of questions here that you can just work through systematically to really get better at each weaknesses. However, if that's not sufficient, you can also ask your teachers and your friends, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you out and maybe explain it in a better way than a textbook can. Also, there's online resources, which I'll talk more about in point 4, such as Physics and Maths Tutor, Matters Maths, all these places, which have specific questions for specific topics. So yeah, that's point number 1. Really actively focus on your weaknesses. You really don't need to do that much practice on your strengths. Obviously, occasionally just go over it and make sure it's fresh in your mind. But I think once you have a key strength in maths, you kind of understand it to the point where doing practice is quite obsolete. So really try and focus and attack those weaknesses. Point number 2 is exam practice. Whether this be by past papers, some textbook questions, going over old homeworks, anything like this. Just get used to doing the actual questions that you are likely to see on your exam. The reason I say this is that a lot of students just go off the questions that maybe they're doing in class, on their PowerPoint presentations, stuff like this. But this may not be what the actual questions in your maths tests are going to look like. So even if you understand the content, if you're not used to how they can phrase it and what specifically they'll be asking, then it can be quite hard to perform well in them exams. So really try and utilise exam practice. For me personally, as a year 13 student, I'm currently doing a maths past paper each week. You probably don't have to be doing this in year 12, but it's just a really practical and helpful way for me to keep going over exam questions and get used to that exam practice. If there's only one tip you could take away from this video, it's do exam practice. It helps you get used to what the questions are going to be like on the actual test, and also it helps you see where your weaknesses are, which links back to point number 1. So yeah, do exam practice. So now moving on to point number 3, which I said was truly understand the topics. And this is something that really only you can know personally about you. I don't even think teachers can really know whether you understand something or don't. Because it's perfectly possible that someone could just memorise a method for a type of question in maths, and then they'll just use it in the exam and get the question right. However, this is a very inefficient and mentally draining method of tackling maths questions. I couldn't stress enough the absolute importance of truly understanding a maths topic. For the vast majority of A-level maths concepts, if you can truly understand why you're doing what you're doing, then when it comes down to your actual maths tests, it's going to be so much easier. You just understand why you're doing what you're doing, and you understand what to do when you see a question. Really try and fully understand the topics in maths. So for a personal example, I made a really active effort to try and do this in year 12. So if I had a maths lesson I may not understand the topic straight away, but if I went home, did a couple questions, maybe an hour of work on it, and I still didn't understand the topic, I'd then email my math teacher and be like, hey, I don't really understand this topic, please maybe explain it to me in a different way. Or I just ask specific questions, like I understand the majority of this topic, but there's this one little application that I don't really get. And A-level teachers might be quite different to your secondary school teachers. They're much more likely to be able to email you back quickly and help you out. So yeah, really try and make sure you understand. And if you don't, no worries, but utilise your teachers and other resources to make sure you do understand. So yeah, all this means is that when you truly understand it, you just retain it a lot easier, which means that in the long run, you have to do less work. So yeah, really try and just understand the topics you're being taught. So I tried to make an example of how to understand the topic, and what I came up with was the discriminant and the number of roots. So in A-level maths, you could be given a quadratic, and it could ask you to understand the number of roots. Or it could be like an extended version of this, so a lot of students will just memorise, okay, the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, and then I'll spend time trying to memorise the rules. So if that's greater than 0, there's 2 roots. If that's equal to 0, there's 1 unique root. If that's less than 0, there's no real roots. And I'll try and memorise this. They might have flashcards or stuff like this, but I won't actually understand why that's the case, and they have to rely on that memorising of that process. However, if you understand that the discriminant comes from the quadratic formula, which is that x is equal to minus b plus minus root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, then you'll know that b squared minus 4ac comes from what's under that root in the quadratic formula. So obviously if that's 0, then the plus minus, well, it's going to be the same plus minus, so there's 1 root. If that's positive, then the plus minus are going to be real, and there's going to be 2 different solutions. If that's negative, then you've got the square root of a negative number, and obviously that is not a real number. So if you can understand why the discriminant is what it is and where it comes from, you don't have to do the whole memorising of all these rules that don't really make sense to you. Instead, it will just stick in your brain because it makes sense that that's the case. So yeah, that's an example I could think of. But yeah, really try and understand where something comes from, where it's derived from, and that will usually help you when it comes to doing questions in actual exams. And now moving on to point number 4, which is utilising your online resources. So for me in year 12, my 2 main online resources that I used were the Physics and Maths Tutor and Manus Maths. I'll leave a link to them too down in the description. These 2 online resources provided not only questions, but mark schemes and also worked solutions, which maybe textbook questions and other questions set by your teacher might not do. By doing these questions, if you get something wrong, you can clearly see how to do it. And usually they'll offer multiple solutions that you can see. So you can see the one that you tried to do basically. They have tons of online questions that aren't really available in physical textbooks and stuff like that, just because of the sheer size of them. Yeah, by utilising these online resources, you have loads of questions you can do. You can have the mark schemes and work solutions that other resources don't offer to you. And then that really helps you when you go over stuff that you got wrong, and you can see what you should have done instead. So yeah, these are my 4 main points of how to do the best you can in your exams in A-level maths. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any suggestions or tips for my videos on my YouTube, please leave them down below in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in a week's time.